All right, guys, welcome in. I can't believe it. It is November the 13th, 2019. It is Wednesday, and it was exhausting because we had 61 games last night on the hardwood floor in college hoops. I hope you're not weary because we got another 44 tonight to go over, and who better to talk with than Ralph Michaels of WagerTalk.com. Guys, it is the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show brought to you by WagerTalk.com. I want to thank you guys for making us a part of your day. We got a lot to go over here, Ralph. We'll start, of course, last night. Some of the takeaways from those 61 games. Some pretty interesting stuff last night.
Oh, absolutely. Some big upsets. And, you know, Joe, I thought to add something to this show for those people that are fans, I thought let's start the show with the best performances of the night. So, we can be accustomed to those guys that are superstars, to those guys that lead their teams. And why that's important is this. As the season progresses, most people are going to miss a game here or there. So when you hear a name that's continually the team leader and has that incredible performance and he's out, it's going to be a guy to be missed. And, starting at the top, Miles Carter from Seattle, they played Pacific of Oregon, and it was a team they were supposed to win. But when you have 37 points and 15 rebounds, that's a hell of a way to get the night going.
Yep, and I do believe also you had Curtis Cobb of Wagner taking on Wesley there. And what he dropped, 42 and 6. Not too bad. 6 steals in that game. Kind of the all-around effort there last night, Ralph.
Yeah, and Rakovic as well from USC. South Dakota State's not a bad team. And to put up 27 points, 16 rebounds, and 5 steals, that sure is a hell of a line.
Yeah, absolutely. Jermaine Marrow, also of Hampton. He had, 29, 4, and 3. So also a pretty good name. I have a feeling we're going to hear that a lot from that kid.
Absolutely. And Northridge, Terrell Gomez is a guy, played Pepperdine, played a team equal to them, close to them, 33-5-1. And, McGowan's from Pittsburgh. He's a monster, 25 points, 8 rebounds, and 4 steals. Tell us about the last two guys, Joe.
How about GW's Arnaldo Toro had 24 and 2. How about like that, guys? You like that? That's 34-20. Yeah, he played 34 minutes. He had 20 points in that, Ralph. And is that where did he have really? He had 24 and 2. That's a hell of a number right there. And Javon Freeman, Valparaiso, also 30, 13 and 1. So really top 8 guys. And guys, those are names you're going to hear a lot, Ralph, over this season. There weren't a whole lot of one-and-dones anomalies in that list we just gave you.
Yeah, again, George Washington playing an American team, so you're not playing a D2 team. You're playing, you're playing a team, and you get 24 rebounds in a college basketball game. You are attacking the boards.
Yes, yep, and the Edwardsville Valparaiso second half too was a winner for me last night. So there are interesting nuggets, Ralph. Here we are, a week into now. We're only in half a dozen or more games to start the season, but I do think it's fair enough to say that we're starting to see the cream rise to the top in a lot of these schools, and some of these there are no more Zions; they don't exist. But there are some guys we're going to be talking about a lot throughout the year.
Yeah, Weissman's close. Weissman is not to Zion, but he's clearly, should be the first pick in the draft.
Yep.
We will just Zion did it against ACC competition. Not that Memphis plays that far down as far as level of competition goes, but Duke was Duke. Well, the cream rises unless you're a Kentucky Wildcat fan.
I knew you were going to get there.
I'm going to break it right in, and like we'll always do, we'll break down the upsets from the day before. And, there was no bigger upset. I'm going to say this. There was no bigger upset than Evansville against Kentucky, but Coppin State against Loyola Chicago was pretty damn close.
Yep.
I mean, it may not. This is the Ramblers team that made the run with Sister Jean. So the biggest upsets of the day yesterday. There were 13 upsets, and a lot of times we're not going to call a 1-point dog an upset, but the upsets from yesterday for teams that were at least +4 or more, there were 5 of them. Evansville against Kentucky. Coppin State beats Loyola Chicago. Charleston beats Davidson. Davidson, another team, a top 40 team, no question. William and Mary beats Wofford. Again, Wofford, a team that's been in the mix. American against GW, and then a couple 3-point dogs in Tennessee State and UTEP against New Mexico State. So, again, early in the year, bookmakers are studying it just like we are. Times are changing in college basketball where you used to be able to look at teams that have 0 or 1 returning starters. Well, UTEP is a team that was bereft of returning starters. What happens? They go the transfer route, they go the JUCO route, and all of a sudden they have a hell of a very competitive team. So, again, that's what you find. You find some of these crazy upsets, and you find some crazy covers, both against the spread and over-unders, because of these early lines with Vegas learning as we learn.
Yeah, don't remind me, by the way, we had talked about that game on the show there yesterday. We did like the under, which hit in the New Mexico UTEP game, but I think they were on a 9 or 10 game run there. Like it had been forever since they managed to actually win the game, and then, of course, they do just that. New Mexico actually pulls the victory out, so pretty impressive there. There were a couple of monster covers last night, Ralph, in college hoops. You had a 45.5-point cover. Easton, Illinois, taking on Chicago State. Has this 98-34, laying 28.5. You had Furman laying 8.5. They won 35. They won by 35.5. In fact, 91-47. You had a 26.5-point blowout. You mentioned Coppin State against Chicago there, 22.5 points. And of course, Western Michigan, 18.5. Against Mississippi Valley there, and that was final one was 91-98. So you had a bunch of covers last night that it's one thing to cover, Ralph. Some of these they were obnoxious. And you had mentioned that early on in the year, sometimes coaches realize in the first half, all right, this ain't going to be our night. And sometimes they just say, all right, let's see what else we got on the team here.
Well, let's look at Chicago State, though. They were, I think, probably the 353rd team last year, right. And they returned no starters. Okay, so like we said, there's some teams that have a bunch of JUCOs and a bunch of transfers. Chicago State ain't one of them. They lost. The Loyola Maryland loss they had the game before was only by 13. That was a good win for them, but. Right. Yeah, Chicago State was 3-29 last year. Oof. Their wins were against East-West. Okay, that's an NAIA school. Trinity Christian is a D2 or high school. I don't know. And they did beat Eastern Illinois, so God bless you, Eastern Illinois, letting Chicago State get a win against a D1 team. But, yeah, that team was bad. One thing I want to mention is, when we're talking about top ATS covers, a lot of people think those are dogs that won outright or teams that were a double-digit favorite and won by 30. It's as important to note that we talked about Michigan State. They failed to cover by 18.5 points. Well, they were a 28.5-point favorite against one of those other bottom feeders, Mississippi Valley State. The score was 91-81. So what do you take out of that? Well, it's either this. Western Michigan played down to their competition. We have Western Michigan ranked too high in our power ratings, and they should never have been a 28-point favorite. Or perhaps Mississippi Valley State isn't as bad as we thought. So by going over these ATS big wins or big losses, you want to take that thought into the next game and then make your decision, which was it? If Mississippi Valley State gets blown out their next game, perhaps Western Michigan was bad or just had an off night. So even though Western Michigan still won the game, They failed to cover by 18.5 points, which is worth mentioning. And, Joe, couple top over-under covers. Again, these are a lot of situations where you're learning. Is there a new coach? Did their tempo change? Or was it an anomaly and they shot 75% from three-point land? So we'll learn as we go. The Air Force Army game went under by 22.5 points. That total was 148.5. Score 69-57. UTEP New Mexico went under by 21.5 points. That's final score 65-50. I will say this. When I read the recap on New Mexico State, they were missing a couple of starters yesterday, so they had a couple guys banged up that they were game time decisions. And if you're going to play it with a game time decision, there's times you're going to get burned, there's times you're going to win on it. Yep. That just didn't work out yesterday. Texas State and Prairie View went under by 20 points. That was a total of 143 with a score of 75-48. And then 4 games that flew over the total. Yes, the unders have covered at a higher percentage than the overs, but pay attention to these teams. Did they change tempos, or was it just an anomaly scoring that well? Tulane Jackson State went over by 31 points. Valpo and SIU Edwardsville went over by 29.5. Manhattan and Delaware actually went over by 38. Again, the Air Force game went under the total. So totals, just like the ATS sides, take with them. Remember those teams. See if it helps you moving forward.
It was interesting, Ralph, too. It's funny you brought up that Western Michigan, Mississippi Valley State. When I was going over the card yesterday, going across the board, it was the highest total on the board. It was 163.5. And I never seen this, Ralph. It was juiced almost to minus 140 to the over. And I'm going, wow, is there even teams play? Like, is anybody going to play defense? And then when you looked at Mississippi Valley, apparently that's generally what they do. They give up 100, and they just gave up 110 points. They give up. So when I looked at it, I'm saying there's got to be something wrong here. It's 163.5, and I'm being juiced to minus 140, Ralph, to the over. What am I missing? Well, obviously it hit to the over there last night, but there is a lack of defense, not a lack of scoring, but definitely a lack of defense there in that conference.
We're looking at 2 things when we see numbers like that, Joe. Number one, is it bad defense? Well, we're only 4 games in for Mississippi Valley State, but they're number 352 of 353. Then you add in, they play fast. They're number 32 in terms of tempo. Yep. So far this year, Mississippi Valley State may be taking over that 353 spot from Chicago State. They allowed 110 to Iowa State, 143 to Utah, 134 to Central Michigan. So I guess you could say, let's see, Utah 143, Central Michigan 134. Hell, their defense is improving. They only allowed 91.
Ralph, when I tell you I couldn't hit the over, I couldn't hit the send button fast enough. When I saw what it was that they were giving up, I'm going, this is not a mistake. Oh my word! Very funny stuff there, but it was. It was enlightening, too. It's amazing what you can learn. People forget it's a market like anything else, Rav. And the markets, buy low, sell high. The numbers, especially if you follow it throughout the day, they'll tell a story if you know what you're looking at.
Yeah, and again, I was just at a basketball draft. We do a fantasy basketball draft with college football team with wins last night. And there were bookmakers there from probably 6 different properties that were part of this pool I was in. And, they're going to tell you, like anyone else, this is a learning process from them. Someone's putting up a number. This is a business. They're probably using that number and making adjustments off the number. They're not studying that number themselves. So finding value or finding a few certain situations, the value is there and it's ripe for the picking. So if you think something is really wrong, it usually is in November. If you think something's wrong in March, it's probably not. You're probably wrong. But in November, the books are often as wrong as many times as we are.
They're learning and adjusting as well. So it's that's why if we're ever going to have the edges, the bettors, Ralph, we usually often do early on because, again, they're kind of in the dark, just like they've got the same access to information we do. It sometimes is a learning process for all of us. So there are edges to be had. But, we mentioned the markets here, guys, and we take a look at what's going on here today. There are some marquee matchups that we will get to. Of course, the Gavitt games, the annual Big East Big Ten is underway, and I can tell you the one game that stuck out to me here, Ralph, across the board, as far as the biggest line movements go right now, both in the total and in the number, is Villanova, Ohio State, Ralph. It's interesting what's going on. It opened up at 131.5, 132, depending. It didn't take long. It's been bet down from a total of that 132 to 127 right now. So anticipating an awful lot of defense with Wright and company there at Villanova and Ohio State. Also, the number, -3 for Ohio State. It's down to -1 already, and it just so happens to be the highest handled game thus far on the board, and it continues to come in, continues to change. 67% of the tickets, 92% of the money on Villanova on the spread, while 33% of the tickets being written on Ohio State, a very small portion, only 8% of the money on the spread for Ohio State. So Villanova is definitely getting, which is why we see Ohio State, the number moving towards Villanova in this one, Ralph. But the total was interesting to me. It's all the way down to 127 here. Are we maybe giving too much credit, the market, to what these two teams can do defensively?
No, again, number one, we have elite defenses. Chris Holtman for Ohio State plays elite defense. And we're going to talk about this more in the marquee matchup game. But, you're looking at tempo, too. These are two teams that rank in the tempo that are slower. Joe, that's obviously a marquee game. There's a ton of games on the board. Give us some of those lesser-known games and where the money's going up from those. Give us a couple of the top bet percentages on either sides or totals from the other part of the card.
We got a couple of very interesting ones here that are they're lesser known, but the significant difference between the percentage of bet and percentage of money. Eastern Washington, St. Louis here tonight. 28% of the tickets are on Eastern Washington right now. Almost 73%, 72, 73% of the money on St. Louis. That's also representing 90% of the money. So a lot of action coming in, not only the tickets, but also the money, all favoring St. Louis. And this one opened up at -7. It's already been, the money is moving it towards St. Louis. It's down to -8.5. The total in this one, the complete opposite, opened up at 137, Ralph. It's already been pushed all the way up to 142 now in a lot of places, as is, and this is interesting, how about Rutgers? We know they're terrible at football, taking on Drexel here tonight. And it's funny, only 35% of the tickets are going on Rutgers, who are laying 15 in this game. But that represents nearly 60% of the money, Ralph. So it appears that the public, at 65% of the tickets, taking the points, but the majority, it looks like the big bettors there, they're laying them with Rutgers in this matchup tonight.
And, you talked about a couple scenarios like that, Joe, where, those really are the sharp square divide games. People know St. Louis, and they know they're a program, and they remember them from the Majerus days. And, Eastern Washington, a team from the Big Sky. I am actually high on this Eastern Washington team. I like the way they finished last year, and I like them. I'm not saying I'm backing them tonight, but they're a team that I look to use as well. So any other big movers, Joe, before
I'm going to give you one
TNA?
more that pulled over here that I'm looking at, which is interesting, Ralph. And how about Grand Canyon taking on San Diego State? And believe it or not here, guys, this one has moved significantly from the total. It opened up at 140, now down to 134 in this matchup over here. And San Diego State is the favorite, but believe it or not, they're getting more tickets. They're not getting as much money as Grand Canyon on the spread. They are laying 11.5 in this matchup here, Ralph, but lower total, higher number the beat. It does look like a higher percentage of the money going to Grand Canyon tonight, taking on San Diego State.
I like Grand Canyon. I like what Dan Marley's doing. I like, last year they, again, they're in the WAC. The WAC's now going to be lined on the normal rotation, so they're going to get a lot more exposure. We're going to learn about Grand Canyon and Cal Baptist and Chicago State, unfortunately, and New Mexico State especially. But, you're looking at a team that, has only been around since 2014, right. and they have money, though. The Arizona owner, Cangelo, puts a lot of money into the program, and that's why they were able to host Illinois last game. They get some people to come to them. It's not as if, though, no one will come to them, because if you pay Illinois to come visit, they're going to come visit. So, I'm surprised Grand Canyon lost to Davenport. That losing to a lower division school is not the way to start the season. Perhaps they were looking ahead to Illinois, but they're a team that does normally play with tempo. So we have a team with Grand Canyon that wants to play faster against the San Diego State team that wants to always play slower.
Yeah, and that's I think that's why we're seeing the total drop here a little bit significantly, almost 4.5, 5 points just in the last hour alone here. So interesting stuff. The markets will speak, guys. They certainly will, and we'll do our best to pinpoint those games that seem to be the biggest movers and shakers. But we do have, of course, our favorite TNA now to get to. That would be Trends and Angles with Ralph Michaels. And listen, 44 games on the board here, Ralph. There are definitely some TNA out there today.
I've got couple totals, angles, a system, and then I'm going to save one system when I get to my best bet. So make sure you tune in if you do like Trends and Angles. The first I'm going to look at is Fordham against Fairleigh Dickinson. And, Fordham as a home favorite, they are now 3-21-1 over under in their last 25 games as a home favorite. Jeff Neubauer slows down the pace. He's been an average guy, tempos in the 300s. And, we talk tempos, and there's a few site guys. I'll tell you what. If you ever or you are ever going to bet a college basketball game and you don't spend $19 to get KenPom for the year, well, you're just silly because Vegas uses KenPom. Every person who handicaps uses KenPom, and you're not going to be able to get a huge advantage because, again, Vegas is using it as well. It's not a secret, but the information and seeing the logs and seeing the defensive and offensive efficiencies for the opponents they play and just everything at a click there. No question. It's KenPom.com. The NCAA uses them when they get to their March Madness. So again, I think it's $19.99 for a year. You're silly not to use it. But when we're talking tempo, that's one of the things you can look for right there, as well as I use them often for the offensive and defensive efficiencies. It's easier to talk about in football. Well, if you're Georgia and you're averaging 600 yards per game against ULM and Savannah State and Akron, that doesn't mean you're the best offense. If you're averaging 600 yards against better opponents, so the offensive and defensive efficiencies just do that. They compare what you've actually done against the strength of the opponent and then rank you in that. So Fordham under the total, they're playing Fairleigh Dickinson tonight, and an over. LSU is now 39-14-1 over under. That's 74% to the over. They are traveling to face VCU, and they've gone 11-3 over under their last 14 games.
Interesting.
And now I have a system. And again, if you're new to betting, a trend or an angle is team specific.
Right.
To me, it's not nearly as strong as a system, which is league wide. And a team fits into that certain situations because it's not one team doing a run or winning multiple games. Well, I looked at how teams do in November when they're off a loss as a favorite and they're at home against an opponent that won as a dog. So it's that simple. You have a team that's at home who is pissed off. They lost their previous game as a favorite. On the flip side, you have a team that pulled the upset. They won the game outright as a dog. Okay, Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot. The team at home that lost as a favorite against the team that won as a dog. Do we want to fade the team that lost as a favorite? Are they going to bounce back? Or are they going to struggle again?
I'm going to say they struggle again. I think it takes a couple of games.
And the key here to this is I told you this is November. Perhaps teams are overrated, perhaps because of their reputation, but those teams are 8-25 against the spread. They've only covered 24%, and that is BYU against South Utah. So BYU is at home tonight. They lost their last game as a favorite. The Thunderbirds pulled the upset as a dog, and that says to fade the favorite in BYU and take South Utah tonight.
Interesting. See, those are the kinds of trends and angles we're talking about here, guys. Very specific to certain games on the card. We'll have those for you each and every show here on the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show. Make sure that you guys subscribe, too, here on YouTube. As you guys are hanging with us here in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the bell. You get notified every time we put one of these games up, one of these videos up here each and every day. You guys can get notified. Never miss a beat. Never miss a trend or an angle. And, Ralph, money line dogs. Now, you and I were on this yesterday, of course, and I will admit, my dog yesterday centered around a kid named Wiseman who got 17 fouls in 30 seconds and didn't play the entire first half, damn it. But none the same. Oregon and, of course, Dana Altman, they're for real, that team again, and they took care of business against Memphis. But who do you look at tonight? You got a dog on the card here that you like?
I am going through the card, and it's someone we talked about that I told you like, and it's Grand Canyon.
Yes.
I talked Missouri yesterday. Missouri didn't get the outright win. They did get the cover. And, when we're talking about these, I often do this. Small underdogs often win in college basketball. But again, we're talking about a win and a cover. So when I'm betting my small dogs, I do split part of the bet against the spread, part of the bet on the money line. So if you still cover, you're basically breaking even. If you get blown out, you're losing both bets or one unit. But if they win the game, you're actually winning well over a unit because you're getting the original bet you made, plus you're getting the money line money. So, Grand Canyon's getting 12. So that's a little bigger than I normally go with as far as the dog. But off those two losses, I can see San Diego State perhaps looking past them a little bit. San Diego State's off a big win against BYU. That's the BYU team that just fit into the system. But that was a road game. So, San Diego State just traveled to play BYU, have a little altitude. They come home against Grand Canyon, and then they have their little brother, San Diego, the Toros, on deck in their next game. So, again, I'm going to take Grand Canyon plus, and as our friend VR says, sprinkle a little bit on the money line.
Love that. And, you had mentioned, of course, small dogs usually – pretty good opportunity for you guys to be able to cash a ticket. Now, you had mentioned it, and there's a couple of marquee matchup games here tonight that I think obviously some of the dogs in those matchups, and we'll get to them, are definitely live. But one of them, I think, is LSU at VCU here, and this, I can't wait to see the reception Will Wade gets here tonight, Ralph. I think it's going to be very interesting because, as you guys may recall, he was there with Shaka Smart and company back in the day, and he opted to eventually leave there and go and take the LSU job. And now he returns home, so to speak, with a team that's very athletic. They did a pretty good job in game one there. Emmett Williams, Javante Smart. They took on Bowling Green. They scored 88. They did give up 79. But the one thing about VCU that we know, Ralph, is they're going to bring defense. And I think if we get one of these games where it's a little bit less scoring than maybe what they're used to, I love the athleticism of LSU, and I definitely think that, they're getting 3, 2.5, 3, 23rd ranked team in the country. I think LSU is a live dog in this card here tonight.
One interesting note on that, Joe, is that, when he left VCU to go to LSU, LSU had to pay a buyout to get him out of his contract. And part of the clause was LSU can either schedule a home and home or pay $250,000 and not travel to VCU. And Will Wade said, hell no, I want to go. So, there's often we think, the coach left, the team's going to be fired up. Well, It's not that he has animosity towards them, but
Right.
he knows these kids very well.
Yep.
It's much easier to prep a defense against kids that you've practiced with inside and out. You know the majority of them, except for the newcomers. You know who they are. So he could have taken the money. LSU said we have no problems paying him $250,000 if you don't want to go play VCU.
Right.
But he said these are the games will get you ready to go on the road and play in the SEC when you have to go to Kentucky and you have to go to Tennessee and you have to go to Florida. So. This is a game he didn't want to duck. He wanted no part of ducking, and he wanted to be there and play it.
51-20, guys. The 2 seasons that he spent with the Rams, he had tournament bursts in both seasons, so he had them revving up. And listen, they love to play defense. They're going to play defense, VCU. I think this might be a little lower scoring, which I think eventually will give way to the team, a little bit bigger, a little more athleticism. I do like LSU in this matchup, but it's one of a bunch, Ralph, of, let's face it, we got some marquee matchups happening here tonight on the card. Some interesting matchups as well.
Yeah, let's look at the top 2 games like we'll do every day. We'll look at least the top 2 games. And, you said these are the Gavitt games. Now I'm going to ask you again. Do you know where the Gavitt games come from?
Where did they come from?
The name, the Gavitt
Oh,
game.
the name, the Gavitt names. No, I don't. What's it? Where does it come from?
He was the first Big East commissioner, so obviously he must have had some ties. So again, hey, you know what? We'll give you some gambling information, and we'll give you a stupid. Let's see, what's
South Dakota? Kiss my ass,
Dakota?
the Blackbird State or whatever the hell it is.
My God, are we going through the Nevada situation again?
It's going to take me a little while.
It's
Mount
Rushmore.
The Mount Rushmore State. Damn it.
All right, well,
I will get it. I swear,
Joe,
I will get it.
You got to tell the Nevada. You got to tell the Nevada story real quick.
Now, for those of you that don't know, Ralph and I have been doing shows over the last year, and when it started out, every time I would come across anybody in Nevada, that's how I used to say it. So Nevada is playing, and we would have to stop in the middle of the show, and I'd be like, "Listen, it's Nevada." It's Nevada. And it took him, honestly, 6 months, every week, every show. I'd say it wrong, and he'd correct me, to the point now, guys, where if I hear somebody say it wrong, I'm correcting them now. That's the kind of influence Ralph Michael has, guys, all right? It's Nevada, not Nevada, all right? It's an East Coast thing.
Well, let's talk about Purdue and Marquette. Two top 20 teams. One, if this were last year's matchup, we might have the best point guard matchup in the country with Howard and Carson. But Edwards is gone now for Purdue. I'm a little concerned where they're going to get their scoring. They have the matchup against Texas, which I like. They lost to Texas by 4. They were at home. I was disappointed in them losing that game, but they really struggled down the stretch. They only had 2 field goals the final 4 minutes. And the concerns of who's going to score for them, well, those concerns came to fruition against the Texas game. We know Marquette can score. We know Purdue's going to try to slow the pace. And that's the interesting thing about this game. Purdue's in the bottom 50 as far as pace goes. Marquette's in the top 25% as far as wanting to push the pace with 5'11" Marcus Howard, who I think averaged 24 plus 25 points per game. So I look at it, and because Marquette's only playing their second game, the only game they played previously was Loyola, Maryland, and Purdue off the loss. I don't have a play on this, but since I have to give an opinion on a marquee game at least, my slightest lean is I don't know, Joe. I'm going to waffle out and not give one, and hopefully you're going to give our fans one here.
Listen, to me, it's the kid Howard is probably going to be the leading scorer in the NCAA this year, right? I mean, he's certainly going to be up there. The problem with Purdue, to me, and I watched him in that Texas game, is that, like you had said early on, they might just be what we think they are, not what we had hoped they had been. I think kids like Eastern and Harms there, they might just be good role players. I don't know if Eric Hunter is going to be a guy that can actually, replace what they had last year. I don't know. My suspicion is they're going to be a decent team that's going to have trouble scoring when they need scoring. And I think that that's not going to be the situation here tonight for Marquette. I think Marquette's going to have an easier time being able to put the ball in the basket. They're going to get bigger shots when they need them. Marcus Howard is as good a bet as any to lead this nation in scoring when it's all said and done. Yeah, give me Marquette. Give me the points. Give me Marquette in this situation. I'll take the 1.5.
Well, Marquette actually favored now at home by
that's
one.
Right. Yes, that's right. Yeah. So,
but and I will say this: when you have such disparate offenses with pace-wise, one wanting to push the pace and one wanting to not, I would normally favor the home team that wants to push the pace with the guard that can push the pace, which would have me leaning over the 142. So, again, just to lean on that. We're not always going to have opinions on these marquee matchups, but at least hopefully when you're listening to it and then you watch the game tonight, you can learn as we learn from it. Well, the Buckeyes got a big win. I was on them against Cincinnati, and, now we're looking against the Villanova squad. Again, another elite matchup. Both teams missing an integral part in this game. Villanova in the past, they sent 4 guys to the NBA a couple years ago, but they don't rebuild like Duke does. I mean, they don't reload. This isn't Duke. This isn't Kansas. This isn't Kentucky. They normally don't get 5-star recruits at Villanova for Jay Wright, despite how good they are. Right. They get a lot of good 4 stars that Jay Wright makes excellent. They get 3 stars that Jay Wright makes great. But this recruiting class, they do have 2 5-star guards. Brian Antoine is one of them. He won't be playing tonight. So Villanova is missing that piece. But on the flip side, of course, Ohio State has the Wesson brothers, and they are missing Andre. Andre is not the scorer. His brother Khalib is the scorer, but Andre is the best defender on the team. So that's going to hurt them. Andre handles the ball often, is a very good passer, is the shutdown guy on defense. So both guys missing a piece on this game. Ohio State has been tested with that Cincinnati battle. They were down by 7 at the half. They showed a lot of gumption to come back and win that game and cover the spread. Villanova, again, we have a young team. We don't know what to expect. Their only game was Army, and that was last Tuesday. So Ohio State has that extra game under their belt. 2 of the best coaches for me in college football. The game's a toss-up. I'm going to say Ohio State wins this game at home in a battle. I'm a Buckeyes fan this year, and I think I think they're going to make some noise. The line's 1. So in the pick'em game, I'll pick the home team. Agree or disagree, Joe?
You know what it is? Listen, and you're right about the coaches, but don't forget, Holtman was a guy that was at Butler, so he's very well aware of Jay Wright and company at Villanova. Played them for a whole bunch of times there, so he's well aware of what Villanova is. 2 very well coached teams. And to me, this is all going to be, what are we going to get from the young kids on Villanova, right? What are we going to get from Robinson Earl, this is going to be what? His first challenge, so to speak. He kind of had a easy time in the first game or so here. You've got some experience. It's a great mix, both of these teams. I got to lean... Villanova is 7-1 against the number in their last 8 games as a road underdog here, and... It's the right spot, right time. I do think Ohio State is going to be good. I do also think, Ralph, that the number has been beaten down here. Opened up at 131. It continues to be moved down to 126. I'm all for defense, but I do think that maybe the number's gotten to the point of now their value on the over at 126. But I like the freshman to elevate their game here and be able to score a little bit more than Ohio State tonight. I'll go with Villanova.
Villanova, as young as it gets, experience. They're number 323 out of the 353 teams.
Right.
If you look at their team, of their top 8 players, they don't have a senior. They have 2 juniors. Their top 4 players are freshmen or sophomore.
Which is so unusual for him, Jay Wright.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who has 3rd and 4th year seniors playing, and that's why they were so good. So I'll tell you what, this is a team that you have to pay attention to tonight. But, oh, my God, if nobody leaves, next year they very well could be a favorite to win the national championship.
Yep, love that. I absolutely love it. So definitely some interesting games on the card here tonight, guys. Best bets here, Ralph, like we like to end the show on. Is there one particular you like a little bit more than everything else?
Well, I'll tell you what, Joe's plays are available at Sports Memo. You follow him at Joe Raineri on Twitter. Mine are available at Wager Talk. I'm going to get ready to post a play, but don't buy it because I'm giving it to you now. So this is a $25 play that I have at Wager Talk. And if you happen to have watched this a little later in the night and you already bought my play, hey, just email Misty at Wager Talk and let her know I saw the tip-off, and Ralph told me to email you, and I'll credit you that thing. So I don't want you paying for something that I'm giving to you free. We appreciate you watching here, and there will be oftentimes I'm giving you the same plays I'm selling to my customers. So, I'll stand with what my best play is for tonight, and I told you I also have a system on that play. I am going to a game that could have been the 2 teams with the absolute ugliest first halves in the history of college basketball last week. Ball State played Evansville. Ball State at the half trailed, I think, 40-18. Illinois Chicago played Memphis. We know how that worked out.
Yes.
That was 43-16, and it was as ugly as that.
Yep.
Well, Ball State came back in the second half and put out a lot of injury, only ended up losing by 4. The rest of the world watched Illinois Chicago get beat up by Memphis in the second half. I think this line is a few points off because of the world. Everyone said Weissman's going to play, Weissman's not going to play. Therefore, there was so much attention on that game. Everybody saw Illinois Chicago, and this line has actually moved with people betting Ball State. Hey, Ball State came back in the second half. They played well against Evansville. Illinois Chicago got ran out of the table. But here's a system that I wanted to mention, and teams that trailed by 20 or more at halftime and then lost the game by 4 or less have been a 33% play, a 67% fade against. Wow. And does it make sense to me? Absolutely. You exerted that energy. You exerted that enthusiasm. You came back in the second half. You closed out the game. What happens when you don't win the game after that comeback? You're disappointed. And now, Ball State has to go on the road against Illinois Chicago, and Illinois Chicago off the embarrassing loss. My line in this game has Illinois Chicago as a favorite. And they are getting over 2 baskets. I do like UIC.
Love this. UIC it is from Ralph. I'm going to go to All Reliable, Ralph. It was an interesting thing Ralph pointed out last year during the season regarding Virginia Commonwealth, regarding VCU. And so you guys understand VCU, 6th in defensive field goal percentage last year. They were 10th in scoring defense last year, only giving up about 61 points per game. We've seen 2 games so far this year. They look to be better defensively this year than they might have been last year. They've held both of their opponents under 60 points. They grinded a win out against North Texas on Friday night. They held the Mean Green there to, 40% shooting and only 10 to 26 from three-point range. The one thing we knew about VCU last year, made a lot of money with these guys, was first half unders. They would come out and boat race people to the point. Now, the second half was a different story, but in the first half, VCU would go out and smother teams to the point where they just weren't. It took to the second half before they could get into any sort of rhythm to try and put some points on the board. VCU's first half numbers, as well as the total, is usually been very close to the under. I think it's 67 tonight against LSU. LSU, this is going to be the best defensive team LSU obviously has seen in this young season here, but I don't know that they're going to go out there and just start lighting them up to start in this game. So I like VCU in the first half, and I do like I like the under in the first half as well, Ralph.
Well, we'll see if there's any coach that's going to know how to break that defense. It's going to be Will Wade. So,
suffocating is what they are.
Yeah, it's Havoc. I don't know. Is it still called Havoc in VCU under Rhodes?
Yep.
So, I guess even though there's new coaches, the name stays the same because that is the hallmark of the Rams. Yep. Awesome show, Joe.
Great.
Can't wait to do it with you tomorrow.
Awesome stuff, guys. Make sure you like the videos here on YouTube. Make sure you head over to wagertalk.com, sportsmemo.com. Thanks for making us a part of your day. It is the Happy Hour Tip-Off Show. Good luck tonight, guys. We'll talk to you again tomorrow.